All right, let's discuss the ITTOs. First, the inputs. There are 7 inputs. First, project charter. The project charter may contain information about outsourced work packages in case if they were identified during initiation stage. Second, business documents. In it, first business case. The procurement strategy and business case need to be aligned to ensure the business case remains valid. The second one in business documents is benefits management plan. This describes when specific benefits are expected to be available, which will drive procurement dates and the contract. The next one is project management plan. There are 4 components of project management plan that are used as inputs. First, scope management plan. The scope management plan describes how the scope of the work by the contractor will be managed throughout the project. Quality management plan. The quality management plan contains the applicable industry standards and codes to be followed. The quality management plan helps to impose the expected quality level of deliverables that are outsourced from the sellers. The defined quality level in the quality management plan may be an input to select the seller who can fulfill the quality objectives. Based on the past experience, if it's found that the seller cannot deliver the expected quality, then he can be directly removed from the pre-qualified sellers list for this project. This can save some time to look for the sellers who can meet the quality objectives. Resource management plan. The resource management plan contains information on the resources to be acquired or leased from outside organizations. This also contains the assumptions and constraints that can influence the procurement. The last one is scope baseline. The elements of scope baseline, such as scope statement, WBS, and WBS dictionary, are used to develop statement of work. This information may lead to identify the deliverables that ought to be procured from outside the organization. Eventually, this helps to plan the procurement management. The next one is project documents. There are 7 project documents that are used as inputs during planned procurement. First, milestone. This list will contain major milestones, shows when the seller are required to deliver the results. Milestone list and the requirements traceability matrix can help you to plan procurement management. Project team assignments. The project team assignments contains information on the skills and abilities of the project team and the availability who can support the procurement activities directly or support the project manager on activities that are related to procurement. If the project team does not have the skill to perform the procurement activities for which they are responsible, additional resources will need to be acquired or existing resources to be trained or both. Requirements documentation. The procurement document helps to plan procurement with sellers. The document may include technical requirements that the seller is required to satisfy, requirements with the contractual and legal implications, including health, safety, security, performance, environmental, insurance, intellectual property rights, equal employment opportunity, license and permits, etc. The scope related requirements that will help to define the end product, service, or result provided by a seller. In addition, this documentation includes requirements for communication, project management practice, reporting, quality, and risk management. The next one is requirements traceability matrix. The requirements traceability matrix links product requirements from their origin to the deliverables that satisfies them. Resource requirements. The resource requirements contains information on resources, both human and physical resources, required for the project. When the resources are not available with the performing organization, then those resources need to be procured from outside the organization. Risk register. The risk register will contain information about procurement related risks. Typically, these risks should be analyzed before contracts are signed so that some of the risk can be transferred to the supplier, which will be more appropriate to be managed by the supplier. Stakeholder register. Stakeholder register helps to identify the impacted stakeholders by the procurement process who can give input to the process, who can guide the process, such as procurement manager, related bodies, and attorneys. The sixth input is enterprise environmental factors, company culture and existing systems, contract management systems, including procedure for contract change control, financial accounting and contract payment systems, law and regulations regarding procurements. In case of international procurement, then the international law and regulations can be applicable. For the procurement, they include marketplace conditions, the services that are available to be purchased, and the existing culture and structure surrounding the organization's approach to the procurement. Market conditions describes what product, service, and results are available in the regional and global market. Sellers, including their past performance or reputations, established multi-tier supplier system of pre-qualified sellers based on their prior experience, product, service, and results that are available in the marketplace, unique local requirements such as regulatory requirements for local labor or sellers, typical terms and conditions for products, service, and results or for the specific industry. These are some of the key enterprise environmental factors are considered as inputs. The seventh and the final input is organizational process asserts. Organizational process asserts that are related to procurement needs to be considered are pre-approved sellers list. Generally, any organization will have a standard pre-approved sellers list to procure certain items. This will shorten the procurement cycle time. Most organizations have formal procurement policies and team. If it's not available, then the project team should supply both the resources and expertise to perform such procurement activities. All the contractual relationships generally fall into three broad categories: fixed price, cost reimbursable, and there is a third hybrid type commonly used called the time and material contract. We will have a detailed discussion about each one of these shortly. For time being, just remember that depending on the items to be procured, the right contract type to be selected. Now, the tools and techniques. There are 5 in the list. First, expert judgment. For this process, the experts will be from procurement and purchasing, contract types and contract documents, and regulations of compliance topics. Data gathering. Here, it's market research. In planned procurement management process, the market research is about the examination of industry and specific sellers' capabilities. Procurement team may leverage information gained at conference, online reviews, and a variety of sources to identify market capabilities and sellers' capabilities who can provide services. Data analysis. Here it's make or buy analysis. First, overview. A make or buy analysis is used to determine whether work or deliverables can best be accomplished by the project team or should be purchased from outside sources. Factors to be considered in the make or buy decision includes the organization's current resource allocation and their skills and abilities, the need for specialized expertise, the desire not to expand permanent employment obligations, and the need for independent expertise. Risks involved with make or buy analysis need to be analyzed carefully. Make or buy analysis may use payback period, return on investment, internal rate of return, discounted cash flow, net present value, cost benefit analysis, or other techniques in order to decide whether to include something as part of the project or purchase it externally. An important consideration in make or buy analysis is the required lead time for material and equipment to be purchased. Specialty items, custom products, and items ordered internationally will take more lead time. So you must build sufficient time in project schedule. Now in context. During planning, you must decide whether the project team will do all the project work or if some or all the work will be outsourced. This avoids wasting the time in planning the work because anyway you're going to outsource it. You should document the decision in procurement management plan. As discussed in the concept level, make sure that the decision is supported by resources within the organization, risk and financial factors, and logistics and supply chain management factors. The fourth tools and techniques is source selection analysis. Different projects may have different demands. Determining the criteria that will be used to select a seller is an important part of procurement planning. So, it's advisable to mention the evaluation method in the procurement document itself so that the bidder know how they will be evaluated. Let's look at some of the commonly used selection methods. Least cost. The vendor who is quoting the least cost will be selected. This is the most followed method across many organizations for most of the project due to least cost. This method works well to procure standard components or there is a well-established process exists. Just by following that, a standard defined outcome can be delivered. Qualification only. Here, the seller will be selected based on the credibility, qualification, experience, expertise, area of specialization, and reference. Quality based. In this method, technical proposals from various sellers are first evaluated. The seller who submitted the highest ranked technical proposal will be selected. Then the seller will be called for negotiation. Upon common agreement, the seller will be awarded with the contract. Quality and cost based. In quality and cost based, cost is included as a factor in the selection. Generally, when the risks are greater than the quality given highest importance. Sole source. The buyer asks a specific seller to prepare technical and financial proposals. Then, the cost gets negotiated. Since there is only one seller, no other competition, this method is acceptable. But before awarding the contract, all the projects and delivery aspects are properly justified and should be viewed as an exception. Fixed budget. In this method, the budget is fixed. The sellers are invited in request for proposal. The seller with the highest ranking technical proposal is selected because of the obvious reason cost is same but he provides a technically better solution. This method is appropriate only when the SOW is precisely defined, no changes are anticipated, and budget is fixed and cannot be exceeded. Let's look at some of the other source selection criteria. Number of years in business, financial stability, understanding of need, price or life cycle cost, technical expertise, quality of past performance, and the ability to complete the work on time. If the organization has a preferred seller list and or master service agreement with an outside source, then those information are considered while analyzing source selection options. The fifth one is meetings. The objective of this meeting is to determine the strategy for managing and monitoring the procurement. Let's look at the outputs. First, procurement management plan. As an output of planned procurement management process, the procurement management plan will be created. We already discussed that the procurement management plan documents how procurements will be planned, executed, controlled, and integrated with other project-related work and the stakeholders involved in procurement process. A procurement management plan can be formal or informal, can be highly detailed or broadly framed, and very importantly, it's tailored based on the need of the project. The procurement management plan may contain information on procurement governance, standard for selecting the best type of contract, policies and procedures to be followed during procurement process, bidding process such as the bidding should be with the international, national or local, how procurement will be coordinated with other project knowledge area and constraints, procurement metrics to be used to manage contracts, stakeholders' roles and responsibilities and their authority, constraints to the project team related to procurement, constraints and assumptions that could affect planned procurements, the legal jurisdictions and the currency in which payment will be made, types of estimations including evaluation criteria, information to mitigate risk-related procurement, pre-qualified sellers, if any, to be used, and how to perform the make or buy analysis. The second input is procurement strategy. Procurement strategy is about how the procurement or service will be acquired from outside the organization. This includes the procurement phases, legally binding agreements, project delivery methods, the contract type to be used, for example, fixed price or cost plus incentive, etc. Procurement phases. In procurement phases, we are talking about sequencing the procurement phases, description of each phase and its objectives, expected outcome at the end of each phase, performance indicators, milestone to be used for monitoring the progress, performance evaluation plan, exit criteria for the current phase and criteria to move to the next phase, knowledge transfer, and documented lessons learned. Now, let's talk about contract payment types. As we discussed earlier, there are multiple contract types are available. Depends on the requirements of the project, the right kind of contract type to be selected. Also, you had to consider schedule and cost constraints, risks involved, and other project constraints. Fixed price contracts are suitable when the type of work is predictable and the requirements are well defined and not likely to change. Cost plus contracts are suitable when the work is evolving, likely to change, or not well defined. Incentives and awards may be used to align the objectives of buyers and sellers. Now, let's talk about delivery method. The delivery method will vary, again, depending on the service requested for. What works well in one type of service may not work well for other types. For professional service, the delivery method may be joint venture between buyer and service provider, and buyer with service provider with no subcontracting. The third output is bid documents. Bid documents are used to ask proposal from prospective sellers. There are two types in it. Terms such as bid, tender, or quotation are generally used when the seller selection decision is based on price, just like when buying commercial or standard items. While a term such as a proposal generally used when other considerations such as technical capabilities or technical approaches are most important. Specific procurement terminology used may vary by industry and location of the procurement. Depending on the goods or service needed, the bidding documents can include a request for information, request for quotation, request for proposal, or other appropriate procurement documents. Let's quickly understand what to use in which scenario. First, request for proposal, RFP. An RFP is used when there is a problem in the project and the solution is not easy to determine. This is the most formal of the request for document and has strict procurement rules for content, timeline, and seller's response. The next, request for quotation. An RFQ is commonly used when more information is needed on how vendors would satisfy the requirements and or how much it will cost. The next one is request for information, RFI. An RFI is used when more information on the goods and service to be acquired is needed from the sellers. It will be typically followed by RFQ and RFP. Generally, the structure of procurement document should facilitate the seller to provide accurate and complete response. They should help the buyer to evaluate the responses easily. However, the procurement document should be flexible enough to accommodate seller's suggestion. Let's look at the details of bid document. Background information about why the buyer wants the work to be done. Procurement statement of work. Procedures for trying to win the work, such as whether there is a bidder conference, when the response are due, and how the winner will be selected. Guidelines for preparing the responses, such as maximum length and the topic to be addressed in the response. The exact format the response should be in, such as which forms must be filled out and whether email submission are allowed, etc. Source selection criteria. The criteria the buyer will use to evaluate the response from the sellers, such as number of years in business, number of previous projects done, quality of response, or price, etc. Pricing forms. Pricing form to adequately describe the price to the buyer. Proposed terms and conditions of the contract, both legal and business. Warranties, ownership, and insurance requirements. And of course, the contract. Generally, proposed contract is included along with the procurement document. We already discussed many times that contract is a legally binding document. The idea of including the contract is to make sure that the seller is aware of all the work must be completed and the price of the project. A well-designed bid documents should facilitate easier comparison of seller's response, complete responses, accurate pricing, and decreased number of changes to the project. And also should be able to accommodate seller's suggestions, such as sellers may take suggestion for the changes to the procurement documents, including the procurement statement of work and the project management requirements included in the documents before the contract is signed. When approved, these changes are issued by the buyer as addenda to the bidder's document and will ultimately become part of final contract. Next, procurement statement of work. Each procurement should have a separate procurement statement of work. This procurement statement of work is developed from baseline to project scope. The procurement statement of work will define only the portion that will be outsourced. The SOW describes the items to be procured in sufficient details. This will help the seller to decide whether they are capable of providing what is asked for. Simply put, the procurement statement of work should describe what you want, when you want it, and how good it should be. So, those information may include specification of the items, quantity required, quality level, expected performance, how long it should perform, where this item will be operated, such as in high temperature environment or in a dusty environment, etc. These details can vary based on the nature of the items and the need of the buyer. For example, if you are buying a software, you may include functional and or performance requirements. Whereas if you hire staff externally, then you may include the competency and the skills required and how soon you want those staffs, etc. A procurement of statement of work can include drawing specification and other technical details in descriptive form. It also includes any collateral services required, such as performance reporting or post-project operational support for the procured items. Remember, if the procurement statement of work is not complete and clear, then the seller may frequently request clarification or ask for change orders, which can be expensive, and the project manager and or procurement manager may find themselves constantly dealing with the questions and the changes. Also, bad requirement statement of work SOW can result in overspending or delay or even failure to the project. Typically, the project manager facilitates the creation of an SOW. The SOW also details the acceptance criteria and or the process of gaining acceptance. The SOW can be constantly revised until the contract is signed. I hope you remember the point that contract is a legally binding document between the buyer and the seller. Once the contract is agreed between buyer and the seller, any changes should be done through the change control process. Typically, those changes to contract will cost money or delay or both. Okay, let's look at the types of procurement statement of work. First, performance. This type conveys what the final product should accomplish rather than how it should be built or what its design characteristics should be. For example, I want a car that will go from 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in 3.5 seconds. This type conveys the end purpose or result rather than the specific procedure or approach. Example, I want a car with all audio controls on the steering. The next is design. This type conveys precisely what work is to be done. It includes the material to be used and an explanation of how the work should be completed. Design procurement statement of work are most commonly used for construction and equipment's purpose. For example, build a garage exactly as shown in the drawing using 53 grade cement. The next one is TOR, terms of reference. When the contract is made for service, then it's called as term of reference TOR. Similar to SOW, the TOR includes the task the contractor is required to perform, the standard the contractor need to fulfill, data to be submitted for approval, schedule for initial submission, time required for review or approval, etc. The fifth output is source selection criteria. In choosing evaluation criteria, the buyer seeks to ensure that the proposal selected will offer the best quality for the service required. The source selection criteria may include capability and capacity, product cost and lifecycle cost, delivery dates, technical expertise and approach, specific relevant experience, adequacy of the proposed approach and work plan in responding to the SOW, key staff's qualification, availability, and competence, financial stability of the firm, management expertise, and sustainability of the knowledge transfer program, including training. For international projects, evaluation criteria may include local content requirements. For example, number of participants by nation in the proposed key staff list. The specific criteria may be a numerical score, color code, or a well-written description of how well the seller satisfies the buyer's organization's need. The criteria will be part of weighing system. It can be used to select a single seller. The document may also contain details to sign a contract and establish a negotiating sequence, seller selection method, such as ranking by weighted evaluation score method, etc. Source selection analysis results in finalized source selection criteria. The criteria are assigned with a numerical percentage value, also called as weighted. This enables evaluation of proposals based on each criteria. The criteria are included in the bid documents to give the seller an understanding of the buyer's need and to help the seller to decide whether to bid or make a proposal on the work. When buyer receives the seller's response during the conduct procurement process, source selection criteria such as cost, quality, and expertise becomes the basis for evaluation of the bids or proposals. The sixth output is make or buy decision. The output of a make or buy decision analysis is the decision to whether a particular work can be best be accomplished by the project team or needs to be purchased from outside organization. Any decision to buy will require the team to follow the procurement management process to obtain needed products, equipments, or services. The make decision may necessitate changes to other parts of the project management plan. The seventh output is independent cost estimates. Doing a cost estimation for a large project is not at all an easy job. Before receiving the cost from the seller, the buyer prepares his independent estimation. The input for this estimation could be from the SME, benchmark data from other similar projects within the organization or outside the organization. If there is no SME or benchmark data is available, then this estimation job is outsourced to a professional estimator. You know why the buyer organization does all this? Upon receiving the cost from the seller, in case of significant difference, the buyer can understand that the seller either misunderstood the procurement SOW or he hasn't understood the complete scope of SOW. The eighth input is change request. A decision that involves procuring goods, services, or resources may require a change request. During the procurement planning, you may make other decisions which may trigger additional change requests. These changes might impact project plan and its subsidiary plans and other components. And every change request must go through perform integrated change control process. I know I'm keep talking about it like a broken record. The ninth output is project documents updates. There are 6 project documents that are updated as an output. First, lessons learned register. The lessons learned register is updated with any relevant lessons regarding regulations and compliance, data gathering, data analysis, and source selection analysis. Milestone list. The list of major milestones shows when the sellers are expected to deliver their results. Requirements documentation. Upon completion of planned procurement process, you may have to update technical requirements that the seller to satisfy, requirements with the contractual and legal implications, scope related. Here we are talking about the end product and the non-technical requirements. The next one is requirements traceability matrix. The requirement traceability matrix links product requirements from their origin to the deliverables that to satisfy them. The next one is risk register. Each approved seller comes with their own unique set of risks depending on the seller's organization, the duration of the contract, the external environment, the project delivery method, the type of contracting vehicle chosen, and the final agreed upon price are updated. Stakeholder register. As an output of planned procurement management, stakeholder register is updated with additional information about stakeholders, in particular related agencies, contracting personnel, legal personnel, etc. The final output is organizational process asserts updates. As we are planning the procurement, information on qualified sellers will be updated as an output. All right, before we jump into the next topic, let's have a quick comparison of procurement documents. It's the table 12.1 from PMBOK guide page number 481. I'm not going to read it, you can go through by yourself. All right, that wraps up the ITTO. Let's move to the next process.